Hello everyone, this is a new extension video for my system HTTP2 push plugin. For those of you not familiar with what HTTP2 push is, I'm going to try to explain it during the video here. For those of you who are familiar with it, sorry for being redundant. It's just the way it goes with new technology. This is a relatively new technology. It was proposed. How long ago was it proposed? I don't know, 2015, I guess. I first came across the push notification, or that not push notification, the push portion of HTTP2 about 2 years ago. And when I read about it, I was so excited. I wrote this plugin, and then I realized that the Apache support was barely there, and the Nginx support was not there at all. So I was excited to read about Nginx having having added HTTP2 push in an update that they released in April. I think it was 1.13.9. I wish I'd read about it in April, but no, I read about it here just last week. So I went back to my extension that I wrote, and I started doing some testing, and it's running fantastic. I have recorded this video. This is the third time. The first time I found a bug. The second time, halfway through the video, I came up with an enhancement, so an extra feature I needed to build prior to actually releasing it. So now that that's all done and all my testing's been done, we're doing the final, hopefully, demo video of HTTP2 push. Now to demo this, I'm going to be using a site that I run. It's basically a parking page to, hopefully somebody will want to buy these sets of domains. I've got softexchange.com, net, org, and info that I'm willing to bundle. I tricked a scammer, and they were none too pleased that their scam website belonged to me. And I have spent the past several years cleaning this thing up and getting it off of blacklists and keeping the SSL certificates current. And anyway, I'm using this one because I don't really care what happens to it. As long as it's up and running and clean, then I'm happy. So we're going to use it for testbed because we kind of need a live site. I can't really demo HTTP2 push from a local host because then you don't really get a good idea of what the real connection speeds look like. Now, my first 2 times of recording this, I was doing it over my satellite connection. This time I've switched to my faster cell connection, which cost me a little bit, but it's better than twiddling my thumbs in a video and trying to explain why it's so friggin' slow. Let's get going. HTTP2 push. For those of you not familiar, I'm going to give a brief kind of a rundown of how HTTP requests work with relation to web pages. So you make an HTTP request to a particular website. Let's say you've never been there before. Your friend tells you to type in this address, and you do. Your computer makes a DNS request to find out where that server is, and then makes a request for a specific page or for the index of that domain, right? And that server, hopefully, responds with a document, an HTML document. And your browser receives it, reads it, and then starts going down from top to bottom and retrieving all of the individual items that go along with that page. So that is the logo images, the CSS, the style sheet, the JavaScript, the I don't know, the Shockwave flash, the audio files, whatever it is. All the different pieces of that web page are delivered sequentially based on the requests that are made by your browser. But your browser cannot make those requests until it receives and parses the initial document that it received from the server. So I get a document and then I'm reading it and I'm starting to go and get all the pieces. Not unlike a recipe. You get the recipe and you have to read the recipe before you know what the ingredients are, right? So HTTP2 push provides developers and site owners an opportunity to speed some of that up, because every time you make a request, there's a round trip. There's a time for that request to be sent and then received and parsed, and the response generated and that response sent back to you. There's all these little pieces that add milliseconds to the total load time of the page. And I mean, we're talking about milliseconds, right? That's not a lot, until you consider that a web page might have a dozen or more individual items that must be downloaded. And that's for a site that's been optimized. I mean, if you're running a site that's got a lot of images, or I mean, like Facebook loads tons and tons of stuff. It's amazing. I don't know if you've ever watched the network requests while you're on Facebook. It's insane. The amount of data that they send, the amount of requests that are made. So having the ability to push information along with the document really saves time from your visitor's standpoint. Someone comes to visit your site, they're going to make their page request, and then all these various and sundry items need to be downloaded before your page is operational. Sometimes before your page even looks like your page. So you may have arrived at a web page where it shows up and it's all black and white and there are no images, and all the links are that weird color blue. They're all underlined. It all looks like garbage, and then all of a sudden the web page snaps into being and it looks normal, like you would expect it to look. But there's that brief time when you haven't received the style sheet yet, and all you have is this HTML document. There's some bottleneck somewhere that's slowing it down long enough for you to see the ugliness. So what you can do is use HTTP2 push to say that, along with this document, deliver this style sheet and this image and this JavaScript. So you could have several items that get pushed along with the document. So when their browser goes to parse it and it says, okay, well, I need X style sheet. Well, it should already have X style sheet. And it applies it. I need X JavaScript. Well, I've already got that. It applies that. The style sheet calls for this image. Well, I already have that image. It applies that. And then it keeps going down the list until it finds something that it needs to download, and it downloads it. But you can really speed up the loading of a page by delivering all the pieces that it needs to look normal. And in fact, you could deliver all of the contents of the page, and we'll go into that in a minute. There's reasons you might want to do that, and there's reasons you might not want to do that. Now there's some drawbacks to HTTP2 push. Number one is if you don't do it right, then your let's say your 12 kilobyte web page that has 500 kilobytes of additional stuff in JavaScript and CSS and images and all that. If you're pushing all those items but you're not tracking what you've pushed, then you're taking your 12 kilobyte web page and you're turning it into a half a megabyte web page every time someone accesses the page, because you're pushing without tracking. And that's what I've done with this plugin, is I've turned it into a push and track type plugin. Now let's open up Developer Tools here and watch the network requests. We'll clear the cache. You know what? Yeah, we'll clear the cache, and no. Let's delete everything. We'll clear the cookies. We'll clear everything. And empty cache and hard reload. Alright. This is super fun. So, the document itself was 9 kilobytes. And there was a 94 kilobyte jQuery, a 273 byte jQuery no conflict, jQuery migrate, bootstrap, the template JavaScript, a analytics plugin JavaScript, another analytics plugin JavaScript, the template CSS, and the template font, the Joomla Icon font. All of those items were pushed along with the main document here. Now what happens if we revisit this page? You can see that all those items, the template CSS, the jQuery, and all that stuff, they've all been cached now. So the document itself now arrives at its tiny size, and all of the items that we previously pushed are not being pushed again because we've already got them. And the way that I've built this plugin is it keeps a running track of everything that's been pushed, so it doesn't push it again. So you might have an extra JavaScript that only gets used on one particular page, so it gets pushed here and nowhere else, or maybe you have it on a couple different pages, but you want this JavaScript to run immediately. So instead of waiting for the browser to download it, you can send it along with the document so that it loads slightly faster. I mean, we're talking about perception here. It's milliseconds, but again, the more you can optimize and streamline this communication, the faster it's going to appear. Now, it might only appear, 1 full second sooner than had they made the requests to download these individual documents, but that 1 second is perceivable. You can see it, and that can really translate into some analytics numbers that you could actually see. So, what this looks like from if you're running Nginx, then you're going to have access to NGHTTP console application. I'm guessing that there's a way to run that in Windows. I haven't run Windows in a long time, other than for my browser tests. But we're going to run this NGHTTP to see what items are pushed, just based on this. So here we go. It gets the main document, and then everything that's listed with a star. Let's see if a star is shown. This is pushed by the server. So the server pushed all these items, and can you imagine making, what is that, 10 separate requests? Round trip time, download time, all that. Instead, the server just sent them along with the page. Let's look at how it's configured. There's 2 ways to do it, and I'm thinking about adding another feature, but you know what? I have to switch you to a different thing while I log back in. Sorry about that. All right. I'm going to be adding another feature which will allow you to push additional items from, like a content plugin. It'll still be within the system plugin, so it'll be one plugin. So there's 2 ways you can use it. Number 1, which I do not recommend. You can do it. I don't recommend it. is with the plugin tab here, you can just enable all three of these, and what the system will do is scan the document head and the document body for JavaScript style sheets and images and attempt to preload whatever it finds. So you switch this to yes, it's going to scan the document for JavaScript. You switch this to yes, it's going to scan the head for style sheets. And if you switch this to yes, it's going to scan the body for images. That can be a problem because HTTP2 push has a server component, and that server component is configured to have a maximum number of is configurable, to have a maximum number of items that it will push. So for my testing, I set that number to 30, but in practicality, you probably don't want to make that number above 10. You probably don't want to push more than 10 items. So that's where the Advanced tab comes in. You should take note of which items you want to push and put them here. And if the item is normally delivered with the Joomla version ID, then you'll want to switch that to on. That way, what is pushed matches what the page is going to request. So pay attention to what those look like. In fact, let's take a look at that real quick. Here, where you see template.css question mark blah blah blah, it looks like a checksum, I think. So this item right here is the Joomla version, and what that is as you upgrade and install Joomla extensions, the version is altered so that the next time you load the page, your cache is then made invalid by a different file. So you're loading a CSS file that's different because the extension is different, basically. So if your script or your style sheet or your script or your style sheet, if they're opened with the Joomla version, then you're going to want to switch this to yes. Images, it doesn't matter, and fonts, it can matter depending on how they're loaded. So this font is loaded from a Joomla style sheet, so I don't want to worry about that. And there are some extra requirements for fonts. The last option here is pre-connect, and this was something I threw in there. This was the extra feature that I added later. Basically, if you know that you're going to be loading content from another server, you can request that the browser attempt to pre-connect to those servers to speed up the download of those documents. So instead of the browser needing to read the document, it's going to get all that information in the headers. It'll get the pre-connect information in the document header. So before it even has to read the document, before it even receives the document, it'll have the header. So it can attempt to pre-connect to, in this case, the Google API fonts, or Google Fonts GStatic or Google Analytics, or whatever, like the extra things that I've added here. You can connect to as many things as you want. I didn't put any limit here. There's no upper limit in the RFC that I ever found, so at this point you probably just want to take a note to which ones you want to pre-connect to try to speed it up. Maybe do some testing to figure out what's going to work best for you. You don't want to have too many in there, but I'm going to leave that up to you. I didn't put any limits in because the standard has no limits. That's pretty much it. I mean, it's pretty simple to use. Like I said, I made you the easy option, which I don't recommend. You can do it. And then I've got the advanced, which is where you're probably gonna have your best results, is fine-tuning this, figuring out which items you should be preloading, and getting them into the push so that the system can start tracking them. that's really the tracking is really where this plugin is set apart from the others that are in the extension directory. Both of the others, they push the items every single time. So that's what I was explaining earlier, where you might have your 15 kilobyte HTML, but 500 kilobytes of supporting scripts and style sheets. And if you're not tracking what you've already pushed, then you're sending that 500 kilobytes every single time. Your 15 kilobyte web page is now half a megabyte, and that's really going to be a big performance hit, and it's going to suck your bandwidth too. If you're paying for bandwidth on your server, if that's a concern for you, then that's going to suck your bandwidth if you don't track the items that are pushed. So this extension is free. It's one of my gifts to the community, and I hope you put it to good use. Thanks. Bye-bye.